Welcome, everybody. Great to see everybody here at Big Hill Books in celebration of Christina's second transmission, or should I say book, Encounters with Living Language. My name's Colleen Elwood. Some of you know me as Coco, and I have had the privilege of being Christina's student and client for 22 years. Maybe longer. I'm not always good at math. And she invited me here today to say a few things, to lead us in a grounding and centering, and then introduce her. So after that, she'll work her magic, and then there'll be a little Q&A or a little interview, I guess, with Monica, the beloved, where are you, Monica? Social media goddess. And there'll even be a little chance to ask some questions. But as I was preparing to say a couple of words, I had to remind myself that this isn't a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I'm really just here to introduce, say a few things, and ground. But it's hard to put into words what this human means to me. Her presence in my life has been invaluable. Her income mystery teachings, writings, guidance, and insight, life-changing. Honestly, I don't know how I would have survived the last 2 to 10 years without her. And I've always been in awe of her capacity to language the unseen in a way that I've never experienced before, in a way that's a felt sense. She has a way of finding words that transmit and emit light. And Encounters with Living Language, which I've read twice already, and will probably read again and again, is next level experience with that. It's a light-infused journey through myths and expanded consciousness. It's a transmission, it's a new vision. So to fully receive this transmission that you will get today, I'm going to lead us in just a very short, simple grounding. So if it feels right, you can allow your eyes to close, and if that doesn't feel so great, or you're standing, you can just drop your gaze down. As we bring our mind back to the level of the senses, we can fully receive at a deep level this transmission from this visionary teacher. So take a moment and just feel the cool inhale and enjoy the warm exhale, allowing yourself to sink and settle and arrive. As we engage our senses and bring the mind back, we can fully enter into this exchange from a place that's beyond word. From a place that is felt and understood at a deep level. Your breath is that bridge. I invite you to deepen it. Every inhale bringing in nourishment, and every exhale bringing in a cleansing release. And as you allow your breath to deepen, and your mind to focus here, imagine you're in a favorite place in nature, a sacred place, because you are. And as though you're sitting on this sacred land, this native land, invite your senses to open and receive whatever place has come to you now to help your body connect to the earth. Through sight and sound, and the fragrances that call you home, awaken to the earth and imagine you're sitting here, feeling where you touch the ground, the chair, allowing your breath to move you beyond space and time, allowing your whole body to breathe. You could just stay here Engage your senses, feel where you touch the chair, or you could join me in imagining giant roots that with every exhale travel down deep and spread wide. Every inhale, breathing in the sacred moment, sharing together. And every exhale, releasing anything from the past moment that doesn't need to be here. Send those roots wide and deep. Feel the earth, Pachamama, rising up to support you. Know that you're safe and supported, connected and nourished. Invite those roots wide and deep all the way down through the layers to the core of the earth, where we can tap into light and draw that light up. Slowly pulling the light up every one of those roots. Pausing to feel body to earth, earth to body, yourself sitting and rooting. A feeling you can come back to throughout our time together and beyond. As we now just draw this light up, out and around us, again and again. Light from the earth, drawing up those roots, out the crown, a beautiful fountain of light, so that in this moment, you feel yourself rooted, connected to the wisdom of your heart, surrounded and protected by light. It is with this receptive awareness, with this rooted presence, and my deep honor to introduce teacher, mentor, jaguar, hummingbird sister, mystic, visionary, mistress of language, and dear friend, Christina Danao.
Look what happens when we get a little sunshine in our 40 to 50 degrees in the beginning of February. All these beautiful faces. And it's a good thing I had a community event yesterday where I haven't come back to the community in 9 years. I haven't done a book talk here since 2008. So I was a little overcome with feeling yesterday, but I got that all out of my system, so you don't have to see me become overwhelmed. But thank you so much for everyone to come out today, and to be with us. So, sound okay for those of you that are in the back? Okay, good. Hi, Bill. I think what I'd like to do is present a wisdom talk that is a felt sense of the book, and then we'll move into more of an interview style where Monica, well, who knows what questions she will ask, but we certainly will find out soon. And I always like to say to people that please feel free to close your eyes during wisdom talk, because the visual actually can be quite distracting. And there is no need to use your mind to receive this talk. Matter of fact, I'd ask that the mind recede and just let your consciousness drink in the talk. So with no further ado, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. No. In the beginning was the silence. The silence was everywhere. Nothing existed. And then there was the first word. And the cosmos were born. The silence was broken in the fiery violence of becoming. And as the planets settled in the cold, endless nights of the universe, silence was restored. Silence. And it was a silence of great depth and breadth. We can imagine the sound of the wind, another word, the wind, as it billowed on earth against the curvature of new mountains and warmed over restless oceans. The rippling of waters and the breath of the wind were the only sounds until the arrival of vegetation and animals. Ever so slowly, the earth developed its own music. Streams gave voice to the silence. Streams gave voice to the silence of valleys, and between the mountains and the oceans, rivers ferried the songs of landscapes. The living word. The living word. And from light years away, the moon. The moon choreographed each sequence of the tides using the same invisible wind, the living word. Over millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, the earth developed its elemental music. Each note arises from the silence, and it falls away again into the vast stillness. Eventually, Homo erectus emerged out of the silence. Homo erectus had an extraordinary sensory system with high acuity. It was connected to the larger continuum for survival. It could taste the different times of day, knew when the mountains sweat because an avalanche would occur, and it could experience a blade of grass singing. It too began to return to the silence. And what emerged from the silence? Homo sapien. Homo sapien with a prefrontal cortex. And this is when language as we know it was born. The wind within us, the breath, spoke the first word. For centuries, we have used the word to name and represent our world. So much so, the doorway to our senses has atrophied. We no longer taste the different times of day, use our sense of smell to be alerted to the mountains sweating, feel the patterns in the water to navigate the seas. We no longer hear grass sing. We just call it grass. My book, Encounters with Living Language, Surrendering to the Power of Words, lives into this question. As Homo sapien begins to return to the silence, yes, we too will do that, will Homo luminous arise? And the word, the living word, return us to the underlying wholeness of the one. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be standing here. There is a time for certain ideas to arrive, and they find a way to express themselves through us. This idea that the word can return us not only to the oneness underlying the whole, but naturally awaken our quantum nature arrived and expressed itself through me. Hence, this book. In 2012, many of you know I've had a 30-year relationship of being in the Andes with a lover and a godson, and I had a near-death experience in the Andes in 2012. I contracted yellow fever. And in that near-death experience, when I was really ready to be on the other side, I came tumbling back down like a deer might plummet through frozen rivers back into my body, and I had this extraordinary illumined light come within me, and then I heard a sound under sound. For any of those with mystical temperament, we know we're not hallucinating, that we hear these sounds. And I heard, Christina, you are to return to the earth. I am the light behind the living word, and you are here to be the mouthpiece. It took me another 7 days to be able to even stand and get on a horse and be led down the mountain back to the United States. And at the time, I had no idea what that meant, none whatsoever. And then in the next 5 years, I had 92 illuminations. Again, the mystical experience, mystical temperament, where suddenly there's high lucidity, high acuity, and you hear the sound under sound, and you're receiving a direct message. Your conceptual mind falls away. You're not able to think, to name, to represent. And out of these 92 illuminations, every single one of them was occasioned by language. And what happened over 5 years, it took me actually 15 years to realize what was going on, but over 5 years, my sensory system was being tuned. There was a governing aim to these 92 illuminations where I had no conceptual idea what was happening, but the word was teaching me the interior trap doors to my sensory system, right? My skin, my touch, my ears, my eyes were beginning to absorb the word in a way as if it were nutrition. And the struts and the fibers of the spoken and written word would begin to fall away. And suddenly I would be in that multidimensional awareness where I'm connected to the entire whole. So for example, if I heard bird song and I allowed it to penetrate my skin and further interior trapdoors open, suddenly I am the bird song, and I can hear the paper being delivered 3 blocks away and a tree that was hit by lightning at the river the night before, all simultaneously, all at the same time. That is our quantum nature, here, ready to awaken. So it's why I say the living word that has been here from the very, very beginning is in its own evolution. It is continuing to emerge and evolve out of the silence and to be with us as we continue to emerge and evolve. Sometimes I say, wow, have we failed language? In part because of our world of technology, and here in America, that we are a very, very fast culture. So very soundbite culture. And with that and technology, we've moved away from the senses, and it hasn't allowed language to really demonstrate what it has and what is available behind it. Some people often say, well, that's quite a vision, Christina. Right? I don't have an experience with the word bringing me to oneness, although I think everyone has had the hair go up on the back of their neck and had full body chills when someone's speaking because the light is speaking from the word. But why I also want to say that I think this emergence is happening now is, one, you'll read in the book that I've had young clients who, I had one brilliant young woman who had a head injury, and as she had fully recovered herself, I said, are you ready to go back to college? And she said, yes. She said, but I'm a little concerned about one thing. She said, I've never studied. She's a straight A student. I've never studied. She said, I've never needed to study because when I take a multiple choice exam, it's like, it's weird. She says, I'm not crazy, Christina, but there's a sound to each answer, and I can hear the sound, and it matches the answer. I said, well, what happens when you do, written? She says, it's the same. If I'm writing along, but it's not consistent with the sound, then I know I'm off topic. She said, do you think I'm crazy? I said, yes, I do. And there are other examples in the book of that space opening up with even adults our age having an experience with the unseen and the invisible that is actually the language is the catalyst. So it's here. Another important reason why I think it's here. In thinking of autism, that we right now call a disorder. So the neurodivergent, the spectrum, the autistic. And in 1995, 1 in 500 children were diagnosed with autism. In the year 2000, 1 in 150 were diagnosed with autism. And in 2020, 1 in 36 were diagnosed. Mutation. Homo erectus. Can you imagine Homo erectus when Homo sapien, the precognitive, when we started to talk about Homo erectus? It's like, you are disordered. That is a disorder for sure, whatever is coming out of your mouth, right? If you think back to the reptilian, the dinosaurs, and when they began to mutate with some with wings, can you imagine that first inaugural flight, what others were saying? That is a disorder. That is a mutation. We call autism a disorder. But what people are beginning to find, especially with the non-speakers, so young adult non-speakers through letterboarding, so they're able to actually begin to use English to communicate, that they are completely multidimensional beings. Some of them know 5 or 6 languages they were never introduced to by their parents. They communicate telepathically, they're prophetic. Unfortunately, they read their parents' minds with ease. The only problem with the spectrum children is that they haven't been able to individuate because they are so multidimensional, which is why we think of them as disordered. I've had a number of young, not 15 to 25 non-speakers on the autistic whose mothers read them the book, all of whom have written me and said, thank you so much for speaking our language. We feel resonant. And they've said the most interesting things to me, like Christina, 15-year-old. Christina, thank you for seeing me. I'm here as the sonic frequency rattle to be introduced into people's field. Like, that's my location. That is why I'm here. At 15. So although we see this as we see this as disorder, I see it as, oh, are we moving from Homo sapien to possibly a Homo illuminus? That the quantum world that we've been talking about for 100 years, that at every cell of our body is quantum in its nature, is awakening. Encounters with living language, surrendering to the power of words, is to say, oh, too, by the way, the word has been here from the beginning. It's likely to be the last thing if there ever is an end. And it's evolving too. And the book really speaks to that. Because of the rarefied nature of the illuminations, they are rarefied for sure. Mystical experiences are rarefied. It's grounded with a narrative of my time in the Andes. All right. And it's also grounded with the states of being that led to that opening. So states of being like emptiness, non-doing, desirelessness, which came from a couple of deaths, goallessness, all these things that Americans do not do well. But these experiences did arise from there. think eventually they will be walking on the planet while doing, but it's very difficult to be doing from these places. So I welcome all of you to think about language and that it's living. And that it's been living from the beginning. And it will probably be the last breath on the planet. And also because I will likely forget, since we're going to go to a quick interview style, is support this indie store. So many of our indie stores are having to shutter. So, buy a card. Just please support the store. Support our community. So thank you. I'm going to bring Monica up on stage, and we're just going to shift into a little bit of an interview style. So here's Monica Leonore.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Christina. Thank you for this.
Yes, yes.
Okay, surrendering to the power of words. A word is a series of sounds used for spoken and written language. Music to me is a series of words and sounds combined together.
Yes.
And the way I respond to this is movement, which we can also call as dance.
Yes.
It makes me feel alive, like it really does enliven my spirit.
Yes.
I feel like dancing is surrendering to what I hear, like this musical language. Do you consider that as living language?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk more about that?
No. Next question. Living language is dance because the felt sense in the body. Let me start in a different way. We've all heard the term unity consciousness. We've all probably heard the term non-dual awareness. Whenever I hear people talking about it, they're talking about it from the mind. Like their mind is having an experience of unity with all of life. An experience through language, an experience of unity consciousness, an experience of non-dual awareness through the body, through the sensory experience, absolutely leads to feeling as though you are connected to the oneness underlying the entire whole. And as it breathes its music, you simultaneously are witnessing it. And to me, that is the dance of the universe and the cosmos.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So I'm Filipino, and in the dialect that I speak, which is Tagalog, there is no specific pronoun for he and she. There's just one word, and it's, you say siya, 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 regardless of gender. You could even call like a dog like siya. So no he and she. Or his and hers. So that's an older, that's an older dialect language. Now we are seeing folks who have a preference to be called they or them.
Yes, yes.
Can you talk more about that part of our new world that's unfolding?
Yes. Maybe. I believe Coleman Barks talked about in Islam, Islam, that they too have no pronoun for he or she. So we have all of these, many cultures that do not have that pronoun for he and she. And of course we know in every language there are words that capture the manifestation and creation that another language never captures, and therefore you're unaware of it. And I think when there is no differentiation between he, she, sha, the accent, the rhythm and the accent shifts, and that therefore reality does. Because think about if you're talking about her brother-in-law, but it's Shah brother-in-law, you suddenly care less about whose brother-in-law it is. It's brother-in-law. The accent is on brother-in-law, not which side of the family, and therefore we're talking about this. So you see how we parse with meaning and representation, and the more parsed it is, the more it takes our reality down this beautiful place called duality, really, which the unity consciousness absorbs duality, but duality separates and separates and separates. In regard to they and them, aside from I really wish we would have created a new pronoun, because using they and them, which is already used in our vernacular, is confusing for many. I really wish, language grows every day. There's always a space for new words. I wish we would have come up with new pronouns. But having said that, again, the beauty of truly dropping down into the meaning of meeting someone who identifies as they and them is a full celebration that gender fluidity is evolving in our culture. They, them is not somebody who's sexually confused. They, them is that I don't really identify as the old she or the old he. I am way more fluid than that, and I want to be seen in that way. That's a new manifestation coming out of the silence that is only going to continue to grow in this younger generation. I would say in the autism, neurodivergent world, the non-speakers have just adopted the word spacious speaker. We so all call them non-speakers. They on Substack now call themselves spacious speakers. Spacious is a Latin word that means we communicate from the void, from multidimensionality. So they're beginning to identify that this is who I am. So you begin to see how the deeper meaning of a word as it dreams, as it loses its struts and fibers, every word has 1,000 roots underneath it that lead to those invisible forces and the unseen and the archetypes and metaphors that where the livingness lives, which is why a word is not just simply a word.
A word has 1,000 roots. Yeah. A dear friend shared a quote from Oscar Miro Quesada. When I read it, it seems to speak of what you have on your book, Living Language. It says, or he says, consciousness creates matter. Language creates reality. Ritual creates relationship.
Please say it again.
Consciousness creates matter. Language creates reality. Ritual creates relationship.
Isn't this interesting? It is true. Consciousness creates matter. All right, the invisible, the unseen, eventually moves into the manifestation. It slows down, and that's what becomes matter. So that's a truth, an absolute truth. Language creates reality. That's a truth. But when we bring ritual, our sensory experience, and our deeply present and in the beingness of language, ritual, it brings what? Experience, right? Ritual brings experience and relationship. Relationship. So I would say, yeah, language brings reality, but language that where we are touched by it and it touches us, which becomes ritual, allows us to be in deepening relationship all the way back to the one that's underlying the work.
It leads us back.
It leads us back.
Okay. This is the last question, and then we'll have time for some questions from the audience. I've often heard you say, and you also mentioned it earlier in your talk. Do you remember? You say that you wonder if we have failed language. How can we, as individuals, cultivate that felt sense of language that you talk about in the book?
I don't know. I do know, though. You heard in the talk the importance of silence, because I'm just going to use the spoken word here. But if I use the spoken word and use a pause, it allows the silence to drink in the living root of the word. If you are with your beloved in a partnership and you're in dialogue and you're both in your full presence, where there is silence and where there is pause, you will create an entirely different dialogue with your partner. Right now, we often are in dialogue with our partner, and we already assume we know exactly what they're going to say, and we're about ready to answer it before it's ever spoken. But if there's room for the silence and the pause, the inciting forces and archetypes and invisibles enter the room. And when the invisibles enter the room, they're forces. You can't see them, but they're forces. Then the mind picks them up. This is what happens in my office every day. Someone says something, I'm in my silence and the pause, the invisibles are in the room, I don't need to say a thing, and suddenly the client has an epiphany or a revelation from the invisibles and the unseen. So I think in our everyday, you can meet your partner in that space where you don't assume what it is they're going to say. And you let it drop into that great vat of silence or pause, but let those invisible forces be in the room. That would be the beginning, I think. Or you could go find a teacher that teaches mysticism so that you can have a mystical experience. But I'm pretty certain that most of us are born with a mystical temperament. I don't know if it can be taught. So it might be a mutation on the planet. So,
Thank you, Christina.
yes. I'll take a couple questions. Usually with this book, people are like, I don't know what to ask. So. Any questions? Good afternoon, Ellie.
Good day. This is kind of a practical question, so if it's not appropriate, let me know. But I've been curious how you organized that book.
Oh, that's a great question. From one writer to another, huh? So I had the 92 Illuminations, and actually my editor, every time I had them over the 5 years, I just bulleted them because I didn't understand them, sent them to my editor and she archived them. And then many of you might know Julianne Cohen. She couldn't make it here. She's my writing partner and she also is a developmental editor. She then sorted the 92 Illuminations by theme. And when I received them, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I still was left, I knew I'd been tasked with illuminations that had a governing aim, and I knew I was going to write a book, but I had no sense of how to do it. So what I did know was the illuminations are rarefied. Like if it were only to be a book about illuminations, people would be like, wow, I don't even understand those either. So I decided maybe I'll set the narrative first. And like, when did these actually start? And then I just, you know how you throw snowballs at a, it's only in Minnesota when you say that, at the whiteboard, this thing, and then there's this thing, and then there's this thing. And what I discovered is that as I set the narrative, which is really the cosmic base of the book, that there were perfect illuminations that would follow the narrative, that would be synchronous with the narrative. And so then it was just a matter of plopping in out of the 92 an illumination that best represented what was going on at that time. And that's how it unfolded. Any other questions?
How long did it take you from beginning to end? I know that the editing process was arduous, but from beginning to end to write that book and put it together.
Yes. I actually had my first illumination in the year that Mother Teresa and Princess Diana, because they both died on the same day. I had my first illumination that week, so 1997, 8, somewhere in there. Then I didn't have another one until 2012. So, and then those 5. So, meanwhile, during that entire time, I was teaching, but I've had an obsession with genius poets who you could read a line and would transport your consciousness, and you'd suddenly be in the felt sense of something else. So it felt as though that were my warm-up to the book, but I didn't know it. I hadn't even had the illuminations yet. And then, so 2012 to 27, how many is 5 years? 2017, 2019 I started writing a book, right before COVID. And then of course, as I'm writing the book, George Floyd happened, the pandemic happened, I moved, I did a bathroom remodel, I did all this thing, anything, all of us as authors, this is exactly how life unfolds. I'd get stuck and put it back on the shelf and wonder if I were going to finish it. And I actually finished it, it came out last March. And the editorial process, I have a lovely editor. She's 45 years in the business, and she was in the top 100 editors in the US. She's tough. She's very, very tough. And with my writing partner, I went through 9 drafts of each chapter. And then I assumed it was in really good shape. It was another 1.5 years back and forth with my editor. And I'll tell you, if you're spiritually endeavoring, excuse my language, but I don't know how many, you gotta fucking be kidding me, came out of me. It was exasperating. It was absolutely exasperating. And I love her. I just love her dearly. But what was exasperating about it was the book is written in such a way to help the consciousness to transport the consciousness. And so when she would edit out that which was to take the consciousness of the reader and help move it into your own reality, and she'd edit it out, I'd be, excuse my language, pissed as hell. But she was very quick to say that you know, for a book to be in its beauty and in its precision, you can't have pieces that just soar all of a sudden. That there has to be, within music, a tempo and a rhythm in the soaring. And so some pieces that, you know, were beloved to me had to go, and everyone who is an author, you know that some of the lines that are just the very best, they have to go. So we went back and forth, and I can't tell you how many edits, probably another 9. So, and just when I thought I had the last one in, oh, she had to rip the last 2 chapters all apart and reorganize them. So it was arduous. Unlike Transcendent Dreaming came out very quickly and beautifully. This was a very arduous book. I felt like an engineer in some ways putting it together. Wonderful question.
Well, and now that you've gone through that process and you have 92 eliminations,
Yeah.
it feels like there's more coming.
The experience with my editor, who truly is beloved to me, has made me go, God, do I ever want to write again? It was definitely a spiritual, unfolding. And of course I will be writing again. So whether it'll be about the eliminations, I don't know. This book is before its time. There's no doubt it's before its time. So, I mean, who talks about Homo sapien evolving to Homo hominis, right? And that language can take us there. Or that language can even bring us back into the wholeness of the underlying one, the intelligence underneath. So, it's before its time. Probably going to write something that is less before its time. Take one more and we'll call it. We can close. Shannon.
As this day is going, I find myself wondering, do you feel any relationship with or connection to, or is there an evolution within you from your first book? Because I'm wondering about transcendent dreaming
Oh, beautiful.
with living language.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Did everyone hear that question? Has there been an evolution within myself from transcendent dreaming to living language? And the answer is yes. The biggest one being with transcendent dreaming, I had to be asleep in order to have those experiences. And in this book, Living Language, never was I asleep. So I was having those experiences, and the rational mind was receding while I'm present and trying to be in the linear world. That was the biggest difference. And I do believe the 92 illuminations just were the preparation for growing into that. A lifetime of transcendent dreaming was definitely the preparation to the next step of awake dreaming, really. So we're going to close here. I want to thank all of you. I have tremendous gratitude for you to come out, not only at 2 o'clock on a Sunday, because I know weekends are beloved to people. Ha ha ha, I know there's no football this weekend. This is not exactly an audience that would care about football. And coming out in February, because as Minnesotans, we tend not to, venture out and do other things. So, like I said, I'll be sitting up here. Anyone wants their book signed, I certainly will sign it. But please support my neighborhood. I walk my dog, and all dogs and cats are invited in here. I'm in walking distance of here. So, but most of all, support indie bookstores. So, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you.